What is up, my friends? How are we? You are very welcome along to, what night is it? Monday night's late night agenda. Appreciate you guys for dropping in to have a chat with me. Of course, we're going to discuss the topic of tonight, which is the injury or the potential injury to Ibrahim KONATE. We'll discuss that. We'll talk about Mark Gay and his future. We'll look ahead to some other centre-back options. We'll have a little chat around what Wayne Rooney has had to say about some of our underperforming stars and a few other bits and pieces that I hope will keep you right up to date with where we are. So appreciate you guys dropping in, as always. Hopefully back to normal today and we can crack on. So as always, anything you want to discuss, throw it into the chat. I will do my best to get to it. And yeah, thank you all for dropping in. Appreciate you. Right, Tom Judge, I'd seen your post, mate, just before we started. Tom, said evening all, hope everyone is well. 26 months with us as a member, Tom, absolute legend, thank you, bro. Not too bad today, mate, not too bad today. Certainly feeling a lot more upbeat today than I was yesterday. Peter said, hello, Craig, hope you're feeling better. Much love to you and your family. Yeah, I'm okay, thanks, mate. Didn't get much sleep last night, but as the day's gone on, I've started to come back around to myself a little bit. So yeah, all good in that regard. So the videos that I had pre-recorded for you guys will be going out from tomorrow. This will be my last live stream for a little bit, like I said. So yeah, those videos, will be going out tomorrow. From tomorrow, I don't know which one Connor's put out first, but there's a series of 10 videos anyway that I hope will keep you guys up to date through the international break, or at least amused. Andy, how are we, dude? Said, thank you for being you. The community as your back. We are and always will be here for you. Much love. Have a fab hollybobs. Well, on that, yes. So as you know, we cancelled, or my wife cancelled the trip to Turkey, our family holiday. It was supposed to be, well, on right now. But we managed to find a cheap little break to Spain. So we're heading over there on Wednesday for a week or so. So yeah, it means I'll probably be able to get back and squeeze in a Manchester United preview ahead of that game, because I'll be home in Ireland for an extra day before I go over to Liverpool. So yeah, that's good. At least I can get that bit of content out to you guys before I head back over for the game. And yeah, like I said, it's it's nice to get the break. We need the break mentally. So glad she found something that we could jump on board with. Donald say, can I say hello to your daughter Anna? Of course, Donald, my pleasure. Anna, how are we, young lady? I hope you're well. Thank you for letting Daddy watch. Apologies, by the way, if I swear too much, Anna, but you know, I'm working on it, but I hope you're having a good day. And thank you, Donald, as well, for being in, my man. Appreciate you. So, lots to talk about, but I guess the most troubling thing today is the report around KONATE and his fitness from L'Equipe. They say that Liverpool defender Ibrahim KONATE is suffering from a quadriceps injury and that the French national team will analyse his situation when he arrives at Clairefontaine, which of course is the French national team's training headquarters. Any update on KONATE's fitness is expected in the coming hours, and credit LFC Transfer Room for their post on that one. So how are we all feeling today? It's been a bit of a mad 24 hours, as I mentioned. I don't want to go back over everything like we did last night because, you know, that's a stream I don't want to have to revisit. But, yeah, look, it's been nice to see common sense prevailing and so many people, whether they like me, don't like me, agree with my takes on football or not, it's been really nice to have so many people reach out to say, look, you know, whether you do or don't like me, a lot of people have reached out to say the whole thing yesterday was nonsense. And I'm glad that people looked at it that way, because it was. But, you know, it is what it is. And unfortunately, these type of situations come with the territory occasionally. And, you know, what can you do other than address it when it needs to be addressed and move on from it? And that's, of course, what I'm trying to do. But one special thank you before I finish on. So obviously my own community, my mods, my Discord and Keen, you know, I hope it goes without saying, Mark as well. I'm very grateful for all of your support. But my mate Lee Gunner, he always has my back, always reaching out with kind words. I know he spoke a little bit on his own stream as well about me, which I always appreciate. And to others like Jonathan Morley, who reached out. Again, I appreciate that from him. Some others that I said even maybe don't agree with me on certain things, opposition club fans. It means a lot because, you know, my name and my reputation is important to me. And if you don't like my opinion, that's cool. No, never had any problem with that. But yeah, to try and go on about the other stuff was crazy. Yeah, but anyway, we're done. Let's move past it. Like I said, I just wanted to say a couple of quick thank yous there because, you know, and Connor, of course, I can't not thank Connor. Everyone just been really supportive Right, Colette said, surprised Liverpool are letting him go with an injury. They kind of have to, from my understanding, Colette, in these situations. I think, if the players are called up by their national team and they are injured or there's a potential injury, I believe that the international team can have their own medical team assess the player. Now, whether that's the player going over to the country or the coach or the fitness coming over to assess in Liverpool. In this case, obviously, KONATE will be going to Clairefontaine, which is their training camp. So, yeah, I don't think there's much that they could do about it, to be fair. And I understand that as well, because you don't want to have a situation where managers are blagging it, going, oh, this player's injured and there's nothing wrong with them. So, I think both sides have to be covered on it, and I can understand KONATE having to go over it. Paul said, I couldn't do what you do, Craig. I don't really know what to say, Paul, because this is why I'm so open about everything, in my life, because I don't have skeletons in my closet. And for people to go to try to look for stuff and have to go back 9 years, and that was the sum of what they could come up with, it just shows you like how weird the world is and how these people just live in these miserable states where they just want other people to suffer. It's strange, and I'm angry about it. But like I said, I'm also sympathetic about it, because I'd hate to be in their position where I go out of my way to try to make somebody else's life fall apart rather than focusing on making my own life better. Did anything happen behind the scenes as to why Adam left top of the league? And no, God, no. There's nothing with myself and Adam whatsoever. Still message with Adam occasionally. Delighted to see him doing so well. Basically we just helped him get FUTV going, and once that was up and running, we just felt like both of us felt it was probably best to focus on our individual things. But now Adam's a good dude. No fallout there behind the scenes whatsoever. I was actually proud to play a part in helping him move into his own bit of content and go out and do his own thing. John from near Liverpool, New York, said, glad you found a vacation spot. Enjoy. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Yeah, this one is a lot quieter, and we'll be, in a small little place on our own, so we'll be able to just do our own thing and keep our heads down and just try to catch a breath for a week or so. But man, that's so kind of you, John. Thank you so much, mate. All of you, you're just amazing, and I love you all to bits. And my wife's been, more than anything, my wife's been blown away by the amount, like even people stopping her in the shop and people in her gym saying to her, what happened with your husband is nonsense. That all meant a lot. David, most of the hate online came from Newcastle fans. So, look, I have this acceptance that people that already don't like you are probably never going to like you, and that they will look for anything to reaffirm their dislike of you. And that's okay. It's fair to say myself and some Newcastle fans butted heads over the summer. But I think that speaks more about them, because all we did was sign a player and they got very toxic about it. And yeah, I leaned into the banter of it. But, if they want to keep hating on me, they can do it. They're free to do it. Just don't lie about me. That's all I ask. If you don't like me, think I'm an asshole, no problem with that. But just don't lie about me. Will I meet up with Lee in Spain? No, because we're going to Lanzarote, so not even mainland Spain, so it'll be a completely different area. If I was heading back over to Murcia, Alicante kind of area, then I probably would have drove down to meet Lee where he lives, which is probably a 3 or 4 hour drive. But no, we'll meet up in the future. I think I'm going to head over to Lee's area at one point to meet up with him for a few days. Donald Moran said, Craig, knowing you for 2 years, watching you, so proud that you've helped many of us here. Never mind the charity work, top man, top channel, top community. Well, the community is you guys, Donald. Like I've said, I have the easy job. I sit here and talk and interact. I'm basically just a conduit between your thoughts and the chat. So, if you think the community's good, that's incredible, but that's because of you guys. So I'm, proud of you. Petter said, Craig's it fair for me to say I feel like we got a bit of revenge on Saturday after the cup finals. Look, I get it. You know, you're a Chelsea fan, Petter. You won the game fair and square at the weekend. Enjoy it. You've every right to enjoy it. If it was the other way around, mate, and we got the late winner, I'd enjoy every minute of it as well. And, you know, you won fair and square. So if you feel a bit of revenge is due, absolutely understand that, mate. You know, it sucks. You know, to go into this international break on the back of 3 defeats is not something I thought was going to happen to Liverpool after the start of the season. But hopefully it gives the lads a bit of a kick up the backside and we can refocus. I mean, I was reading the Echo, trying to, you know, do my notes and stuff for this evening's stream, and I was seeing that they basically said something I've been thinking of. We seem to have a run of a lot of away games there as well. And even the home games that we have had, if you look at them, you know, Newcastle at home, we've had a Derby at home. So hopefully there is some more open and shut type games coming up for Arnott and the boys at home, particularly. I want to read you out something that the Echo have said, one of the 5 conundrums that they said, or one of the 5 things that Arnott has to maybe try to figure out over this international break. And one of them was about Salah. So I'm going to read out to you what the piece says, and then if it's okay, we'll have a chat about it. So it said, chiefly among Slot's problems is how to get Mohamed Salah back to the form he showed last season when he scored 34 times in all competitions and turned into one of the best campaigns as a Liverpool player. Salah's only ever finished out of the top 2 expected goals in the Premier League during his time with the Reds. He's only ever finished twice, which came 23-24, and they went on to just say basically he is currently in the 55th percentile for XG this term, which is proof that this is more of a problem than Salah just enduring a dry patch when the big chances presented themselves. He's having fewer shots per 90 minutes than previous years at just 1.4, fewer touches inside the opposition penalty area where he's down in the 69th percentile. So basically where I'm going with this is there are a few things that Arna has to figure out. And how to get Mohamed Salah more involved in the action areas is probably one of them. And it probably comes down to the relationships, like we've spoken about before. You know, he doesn't have Trent there now, so we knew exactly what to get from Trent, where the balls were going. And on top of that, though, he hasn't even had a consistent right-back partner in there to get used to. And that's another one of the conundrums that they spoke about, trying to settle on the full-backs, which, you know, I've been saying here as well. We've had 3 different right backs that I can think of, maybe 4 actually, because I think Endo played a little bit there in one game. So we've had 4 different right backs so far used this season, and we're only 9 games in all competitions. So that needs to be figured out as well, and Arna needs to settle on a back 4, because that unit needs to learn how to function together. And of course, then you throw in a new goalkeeper behind now with Georgi Marmadashvili for the next, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever it is, then you do hope that when we settle in, more of these little kinks or problems start to work themselves out. Did you see Fanzine TV's video supporting you? So I did see there was a couple of videos out and about, Kai, but I didn't watch any of them. I don't want to relive all of the stuff, but all I can say is to anybody that did say anything supportive of me, messaged or made any content around it, appreciate them. Even if I've never met these people or don't know them, I appreciate them calling out the nonsense for what it was, which was just absolute crap, to be honest with you. Keane said, do Isak and WIRTZ have a big impact on those numbers as they want more of the ball and see themselves as the main man too? It's a difficult one to figure out, because I don't think there is any one thing that we're doing that we could suddenly just switch and make it better. But we do have to understand how to get the most out of whoever's in the front line now. So those changes that have come in, 2 new centre forwards, and Salah needing to forge relationships with these guys, it is going to take a bit of time, that's fair enough. But the style of play and the way that we're playing is probably the most confusing thing to us Liverpool fans. What has changed so much? Is it just down to these new players, or, we need to stop the rot, Keane, is where I'm going with this. And Yeah, you can look at the Manchester United game after the international break in one of two ways. You can look at it and think it's the perfect game to come back to, or you can say, if United get up for this game, smell a bit of weakness, and we don't get a result, are we then into panic territory, or do we still keeping on? It depends on your perspective, I guess, and your expectations going into the season. Oh, look, I'd be a liar if I said I feel as confident now about retaining the Premier League as I did a few weeks ago. Certainly in the summer. Maybe some of us had underestimated the change. Because so many times people came in the summer and said, do you think there's too much change? And I'd push back and I'd say no. Well, it certainly has to be part of what we're seeing now, the change. But whatever it is, whether it's Salah, whether it's KONATE, whether it's the relationships, whether it's the patterns of play, whether it's the new players, whether it's the grieving process, we have to figure out a way to get the train back on the tracks and get back to winning ways. And I hope that starts with the Manchester United game, because we're now still in a good position. Like, we're not in a good position as we were a few weeks ago, but we're 1 point off the top of the league. And let's see how Arsenal get on now as front runners for a little bit. So fingers crossed we can get that win against United, because I honestly don't even want to think about not winning against United, because then things become a little bit more squirrely for the manager. But I don't know. Like, this is kind of uncharted territories for us as Liverpool fans. Certainly for me making content, it is. It's not too often this has happened, where we've lost 3 in a row, but I think the questions on the manager's future are way, way off the mark. So let me just ask that for tonight's first poll, because I want to talk about how people view Arne and their faith in Arne. So let me just ask on this one. 1 second. So, question I'm going to ask is, do you still have faith in Arne to sort it out? And I suppose I should put in an unsure option as well. So, yes, no, or unsure. For me, look, I have no doubts that he's the man to be in charge. I have no urge, desires, or want to start talking about calling for the manager to be sacked. But he is in a mini crisis, and probably his first real one as Liverpool manager. So I am intrigued to see what happens. The big problem for me comes is if he doesn't think there's a problem. That's what would concern me. He says one thing to the camera, and that's okay, because he has to support the players and the process publicly. But you wonder, is he sitting at home in the evenings thinking about it and scratching his head trying to figure out how to get the train back on the tracks? The legend said, how do you fare City in the title race? I still don't think they're going to be there at the end of the season. I think they'll be better than last season. But for me, mate, in the summer, I always said I view Arsenal as the competitors for us this year. Others said City, some said a mix of both. But I'm certainly more concerned about your lot, because you're an Arsenal fan, than I am about City. But ultimately, City are within touching distance as well now, so we got to keep our eyes on all of them. Mark said we're 1 point better off than last season. No crisis at all. So, I don't think that's fair to say there's no crisis at all, because again, context is important, and the context is that 2 weeks ago we were 5 points clear, and 3 games later we're second, and we lost a game in the Champions League. And whichever way you dress that up, I just don't think that's good enough for Liverpool. So, yes, it's not the end of the world, but to say we're better off than last year, I think I would disagree. Look, factually, I can't disagree with it, but I would disagree with feeling that it's the same as last year. because I don't see us being anywhere near as smooth yet as we were. Someone said something about Saeed in the chat. Am I mates with Saeed TV? If so, any chance for a preview with him? I know Saeed, yeah. I've done a couple of things with him before. Very nice guy. I won't be able to do a preview because I'll be away. But other than that, I would have had no problem doing a preview with Saeed. And maybe for the reverse fixture, I can get in touch and we can do one with himself. Maybe one with Adam as well. But yeah, for this one, I'll be away, so I wouldn't be able to. Sharkovic said, I lost a little bit of faith on Saturday. He needed to have balls and take out Salah with Chiesa. I'm 100% sure we win that game because we would have been less selfish. So, for me, I agree that he should have been taken off. I'm still baffled as to why Chiesa wasn't given a chance on Saturday, excuse me. Have I lost a little bit of faith? Not really. No, not really. Like I said, I don't think that there is one thing the manager's doing wrong. I think that there's a collective problem at the minute. And one word that started to come up a little bit in conversation, and Rooney, I think, was talking about this, was more maybe about ego. And, you've seen those words from Luis Diaz talking about people in the Bayern dressing room not playing for themselves or goals or whatever. So if there is any ego, well, I hope, and I don't believe it, I don't think these guys are egotistical. You've got to have some level of confidence or self-belief to be at the level that your Virgils, your Salahs operate at. But you also have to be realistic, and they haven't been good enough this season. From, like I said, individual games, we can have individual flaws, we can pick out individual performances, but ultimately as a unit, we don't look right at the minute, and that's up to Ireland to figure out. Mansour said, if you don't mind me asking, what happened with the channel with you and Adam? So I've answered this question like 5 minutes ago. I don't know if something been said or something that I've missed out on here. Because, yeah, I answered at the time. I answered it about 5 minutes ago. No, nothing happened with me and Adam. We're still in contact. My aim was to help him go out on his own and set up FUTV, which we did. I helped them both financially at the start of that and just with technical support from our side and a few other things. And then when he started with FUTV, our channel started grinding out more numbers as well then. And it just got to the point that we said, I think we both just need to focus on our own things at the minute. And we didn't really have the time and the freedom to get back and put in the effort that you'd need to put in to grow something new. That's pretty much it. Like, there's certainly no bad blood I'm aware of with me and Adam. Adam is a good guy, and I certainly have no bad feelings towards him in any way, shape, or form. Lee Jericho said, sending my love from my family to yours. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. Really do. Thank you, Lee. Ashwak said, stay strong, Craig. Have you rebooked? That's great. And not same place, no. We're supposed to be going to Turkey. But we found somewhere pretty cheap, and we're heading over to Lanzarote for a week. Bulongo said, buy a centre-back and a DM in January to give competition to Gravenberch and KONATE. I don't think many of us would disagree with that sentiment. Certainly the two areas that, most of us feel are probably in need. Like the centre-back situation, if nothing else, we've had a couple of worries now. So right now we don't know whether KONATE has an injury or not. So that's going to be assessed by the French national team. So, let's just play this out for a second and say he did, and he was out for a few weeks. Then we're down to real bare bones of Gomez and Virgil, and that's it, before you start putting the likes of Gravenberch back in there. So I think the centre-back situation should be a no-brainer at this point to go in there and get one sorted out. Who that is? Well, I'd be surprised if it was Mark A in January, based off some other reports, based off Palace's season as well, and his relationship, of course, with the Palace fans, the fact that he's club captain. it's questionable whether he'd want to go in January or not. So for me, even if he's in the bag, let's say, for next summer, and Liverpool already have that sussed out, and again, I'm not saying it is, but I'm, a hypothetical, I still think we need one in January. Because I think next summer we'll likely see Gomez depart based off the fact that he was close to going this year, only for the AC Milan offer came in too late for him to get the medical done. And of course, the move for us with Mark A fell through as well. Kukurea said they were told to pin Mo Salah down. So let's say in that scenario, Christina, if they're told to pin him down, then as a manager or a coach, you would hope to utilise the space that's been taken up by them closing down Salah. So let's go back to the watch along, and there was 3 or 4 occasions where we were talking about one of our players breaking centrally, and it was always going right hand side, particularly second half to Salah. Now, if they're looking to pin on him, go left. Give them something to think about on the other side, because they can't not occupy Salah. So if they have 1 or 2 players out there with him, then in theory you would hope to be space that can be exploited elsewhere. And we didn't really find a way to do that. Now, I do want to say this about that game. At the end of it, it always felt like somebody was going to win it. And it could have been either team. We had chances, they had chances. So that could have very easily swung the other way, and it could have been 2-1 win to us. But it wasn't. And we've got to try to figure out why we were so wasteful, because other games we talked about not really creating enough chances. Again, on Saturday we had plenty. We've just made incorrect decisions in the final third. Joseph said, "Hey Craig, I hope you're well. I love you. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, and right back at you." Alvin said, "Hey Craig, I think this is actually because of Isak presence. Isak signing made the team become complacent. They just don't run and fight anymore." Say, look, I can't answer that question with a yes or a no, but what I can say is you would hope it would have had the other, the reverse of it, that you'd look at it and go, wow, look at this guy we have in now. Let's all go at this 100 miles an hour, because the caliber of what we have in the squad is unreal. So what I would say is it looks like Ekitike maybe settled into the team a little bit quicker, because he's had more minutes, more repetition, had a few goals. It feels like we need to figure out how to best utilise Isak still. And there was something else that Chris picked up on actually in the podcast. They need to start understanding when they're going back to Georgie now to go to his left foot and not to his right foot. Because if you go back and rewatch the match, he was making clearances with both feet, because a lot of the time they weren't giving it to a stronger foot. So we need to figure that out as well. There's new relationships in that back four that need to be sussed out. So there was always going to be some teething problems. Just for me, and I can only speak for me, there's probably been a couple more than I expected. I said from day one, I expect Isak will probably not be playing 90 minutes till after this international break that's coming up. And, if I'm being honest, he's probably played more than I expected. After he came in, I thought the building up of fitness would have maybe taken a bit longer on the training ground before going onto the pitch, but maybe needs must, especially with the red card that Ekitike picked up for the second yellow. Mo lost his best mate a few short months ago. Lads needs therapy, not berating. So, two things can be true at once, right? And this is my take on the Jota stuff. They all lost a brother and a mate and a teammate. And there will be some people who maybe are off the pace. But shouldn't those people be kept out of the limelight for a little bit? So if it is impacting Salah more than others, well then the manager should be taking Salah out of the limelight, giving him time to process everything and grieve till he feels himself, and give somebody else a run there. So what I'm trying to say in a non-blunt way is it's perfectly normal, understandable, and absolutely acceptable that some players are in more a difficult situation mentally about Diogo's loss than others. I'm not saying any cares more than anybody else, but we all grieve differently, and some people can compartmentalize stuff. But without trying to be rude as well, it can't be a get out of jail free card for everyone all the time either, because there is still a job to be done, and it's okay if you're not up to it. That's, like I said, I want to keep putting that point across. It's okay if you're not up to it, but you got to step aside then and let the people who are, or the people who, maybe can compartmentalize it and block it out a little bit. So, let's be fair about this. He hasn't been good enough. And the reasons for that can be a whole multitude. But nobody gets a pass, mate. Nobody gets a pass. We're fans. We're supposed to have expectations. And I just feel, I don't want to say it's a cop-out, but I feel like it's ignoring the many other things that are still not right either. It's part of it. It is, but it can't be the be-all and end-all. It can't just be that thing. But like I totally do understand that of course it's going to hurt. I've no doubt about that. At this point, we should sell Mo. Slough feels obligated to play him no matter what. Addition by subtraction. Mo is great, but can't have a player run a team. So on that one as well, I feel that's probably gone a bit too far, Matteo, in the other direction. We don't know. So that's just one thing. So one thing that came up last year when we were all fighting Mo's corner for his contract was he's earned it. He deserves it. Pay him. And then you had what if this turns into an Aubameyang, an Ozil type situation, Sanchez type situation, where Liverpool pay a player who falls off. For what it's worth, I don't think this is what's happening. I don't think Mo feels like he's got his payday now and he's putting the feet up. Not at all. I think this is a genuine crisis of confidence and hurt from Diogo, as well as new teammates and a system that feels like nobody really understands that at the minute. So like I said, I think there's 3 or 4 things, and if we can start putting some of these right, hopefully the rest will work themselves out. And it's not just Salah. I feel like we need to be fair. KONATE has been horrendous. Horrendous. More often than not this season, and he has had some decent games. But one scapegoat ain't going to fix this. Now, I don't know what the situation is in the dressing room with Salah. I don't know why he maybe wasn't taken off. Whether, it is an ego thing. I haven't got a clue. But for me to speculate on that, I think would be unfair as well. Jacko said, I think the main worry is this is Sloth's first hardship and none of us really knows how or if he can deal with it. I do think he'll get us through it. That's okay, yeah. The unknown is scary. And at the moment, this kind of is the unknown. Because last year, when we knew we had a new manager, but we knew that the team still had that coherence or that understanding because they'd all played together. So we had that, we had a manager, and he made little tweaks as the season went through. And I think the biggest difference from him versus the season before with Jurgen was his ability to manage the workload and maybe prevent some injuries that Jurgen wasn't able to the season before. And I think that was the difference as to why we won the league last year, not the year before with Klopp. But you're right, we don't have a body of work that we can look to think, okay, this is fine, he'll navigate us through this. We all hope and want him to, but we have to wait and see. So, we asked, do you still have faith in Slot to sort it out? Yes, no, or unsure. If you haven't voted, please do. Stevie Boy said, Jota's passing was devastating, but we're not going to use this for the whole season when things aren't going our way. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. It can't just be a get out of jail free card. It is, of course, part of a problem. But we can also talk about using it in the other way. Using it as fuel to do something in his spirit, in his honour. So, I'm sure these guys will have access to mental health professionals if they need them. I'm sure that they have. I'm sure that offer has been put out to everybody by the club. Sometimes they have, they have a sports psychologist, but I'm sure that the grieving counsellor would have been available to these guys as well. And like we said earlier, no two individuals are the same. So I've always been quite good about being able to compartmentalize certain things and block it out for a little while to do what I needed to do. Others maybe can't. So that's why I'm very understanding if people are suffering because of that. But I also do agree with Stevie Boy that, I don't want this trotted out as an excuse, because it's part of the excuse, but it isn't all of it. And poor form, new relationships, a weird system, these are all factors in it for me. And also, one of the things I admired about Arna last year was his ability to go in at half time and make changes that were very apparent in the second half in the performance levels. And if I could flick a switch for one thing and just have one thing change tomorrow, it would be the intensity at which we start games. And I would say to take that handbrake off a little bit more risk for a bit more reward. Because the tendency, and I don't know if this is what's happening with us, but in any walk of life, if you're playing golf and you've got the yips, or if you're playing tennis and your serve isn't well and you're overthinking your second serve, you're more often than not going to take something off it. You're going to go for safety first. So the difference is when you're confident, you're not thinking about these things. It's just happening and flowing naturally. So I think we're overthinking some things. I think we're taking that little extra touch too often at times. And I think we're just not moving the ball quickly. It was really apparent to me against Chelsea in 3 or 4 occasions when we were looking to pass the ball out from the back, and Chelsea's first press came towards McAllister or Gravenberch. And passes that I've seen them make time and time again that had an element of risk to them, but were still a high percentage pass, I'd seen them shy away from and go sideways, probably out of just fear of another mistake. And these are all factors of it. So the confidence has to be put back into the team. Nessie said Slot needs to make a new system around Isak, Ekatike and WIRTZ. I'm tired of watching everybody just yank the ball to Mo and Gakpo in almost every attack. So yes, finding out how best to use Florian is one of the things that I said that was in that Echo article earlier on, where they had 5 things that Arna needs to think about over the international break. And finding a way to get the best out of Florian Wirtz, or to acclimatise him as quickly as we can. That's definitely one of those factors, Nessie, yes. Alan said, "Hi Craig, not long in from work, but good to see you in better spirits today." I think, you know what, mate, I don't know what the right phrase to use is here, but it was very heartening to see a lot of people have my back because it was the right thing to do, whether they liked me or not. That, to me, meant a lot over the last 24 hours. So, I've spent the night looking, reading, going through comments, trying to figure it all out, gone back over previous stuff, and just... There's 2 things when these happen. You don't want to give it too much oxygen. You don't want to overdo it, but you want to address it. So trying to strike that balance, I felt like I didn't want last night's stream to be the last stream before I, do take a break. I needed to come back tonight with some form of normality, talk about footy, enjoy myself with you guys, and leave it on that note before I head off. It just, that felt the right thing to do. Andrew said, "I'd like to see a 4-3-2-1 with Wirtz sitting in behind the 2 new centre forwards, fullbacks providing width, and 3 mids instead of 2. Get all new players in and best performers in the team." It's an interesting conundrum, Andrew, isn't it? When you've got players like Wirtz who are still taking the time to settle in, and do you keep playing them? Do you keep putting them out there and hope that with repetition you see gradual increases? Or do you bite the bullet and go back to your tried and tested? And again, it's probably an individual thing about what you'd like to do. And in some positions, He's kind of done it. Like, he's more often than not gone with his new left back in Kirkes. And WIRTZ has played a lot of the games. So when do you strike the balance? Like, I was actually happy he went back to the old midfield for the Chelsea game. But what we gained from that, I think we also lost it because McAllister's just not himself. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a form, an injury, something else. But Maka isn't himself either. So there's a few things this season that are kind of complicate matters. You know, there's nobody excelling that I can see so far this season, other than Alisson. Colin said, "Hey Craig, amongst the playing style tactics, I think our most not talked about issue is our finishing. We miss sitters regularly that could change games." Definitely, like WIRTZ comes to mind with one that he should have scored. Salah certainly had a couple. There was the Isak one where he got into the penalty area and he went left side to the 6-yard box, kind of off balance a bit and couldn't quite pick out the far post. There are definitely moments. Definitely. I think we're taking too long before we shoot. I've said this a few times. I think they could take a lesson from young Rio Ngamoa and how he took his opportunity against Newcastle. And you see at times we're taking touches and it's giving the defenders time to rush out and get a block in. And so many of our shots are getting blocked. And so many of our crosses are getting blocked. So yeah, there is some poor finishing as well. But what do you do? Ultimately, what do you do? Because Arna doesn't seem to feel that Gakpo is underperforming, whereas I think a lot of us would feel like he's not at his best anyway, whether you think he's underperforming or not. There isn't a doubt that Salah isn't at his best. And then you've got 2 new centre forwards into the mix as well. So to get that balance right, it's going to be difficult for him. But I'm interested to see the relationship that forms between Ekitike and Isak, if there is to be one, or if they're going to be used as individual centre forwards. You would say, a betting man would probably guess we'll see Ekitike given some chances on the left with Isak through the middle as well. Andrew said I meant 4-3-1-2. So, it feels 4-3-1-2 feels a little bit too defensive to me, Andrew. Now, look, I guess it's another variation of a 4-3-3, right? It's just you've got 2 strikers and a 10 in behind. I'd be okay with the 4-3-1-2 system if the fullbacks were really given the license to get forward. And not a halfway house, like really given that license to get forward and operate as wing-backs with one of your 3 midfielders, Gravenberch, dropping in to split the centre-backs. You probably get the most out of WIRTZ as well in that position because he is a 10. He does play in behind the forwards and tendency is to go to the left, but ultimately you're right. He likes that pocket. But in our system, or any system, I think you can carry one passenger, somebody who doesn't come back to defend as much. And that's Salah in our system. You know, and you don't have to take my word for that. The manager has said that previously, and many pundits have picked it out. Salah doesn't have the expectation to get back and defend as much as others. So we have one passenger. I don't think we can afford to carry more in the system. So something there also has to give. Would I sell Mo for 80 million in January? No, probably not. No, because we're still talking about more change at that point, and who do you bring in for the 80 million? And are we still going to be talking about that person taking? I think that type of deal for somebody as influential as him, if he ever does the part, I would say would be something that should be done in a summer window with more time. Lee said, I think it would be better if Mo was used as an impact sub like Solskjaer. Coming on the 60th minute, running at tired defenders could help his game. You just need to get Mo closer to goal, basically, is what I'd be thinking. Whether that's, having a starting position in the half space instead of out in the wide area. Different things you could do. But it feels like a lot of the chat, again, is coming back to benching Mo. And as much as I agree that he's not been at his best, I don't think he's the only problem. I think he's one of many that Arna has at the minute. Right, so we've had 1,500 votes. 65% of people say yes, they still have every faith in Arna to sort it out. 18% are unsure, and 17% said no. I'm in the yes camp. I've no doubt he will figure a way around it, but I am concerned about how quickly he'll find that solution, and if we'll have a bit too much making up to do in the league by the time it's figured out. So I've mentioned this the other night. We've almost got 2 seasons in a season. You've got your Premier League season, where it's imperative that you have a consistency across the entire season if you want to challenge for the league. You have to have some level of a consistency across the season. Different so in the Champions League. Champions League, once you make sure you get through those knockout stages, if you can peak at the right time, you have a really good chance there. Like, think about it like the NFL. You go through your regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, if you can peak in the playoffs, you're good. And we see it in World Cups all the time as well. Look at Argentina when they won the World Cup. I think they lost. Did they lose to, I don't know if it was Saudi Arabia or somebody? They lost a really easy game on paper early in the tournament, but they peaked at the right time and they found a way to make it all come together when it mattered in the knockout stages. So that's where I'm concerned for this season. We've plenty of wiggle room left in the Champions League, plenty of wiggle room, but not really so much in the league for me. So I'm more concerned about our league form than I am about what's happening in the Champions League. Eddie said, we can't keep making excuses for Mo's bad performances. If that was Darwin, he would have been criticised. But, so, for the people, I think there's a mix in there, Eddie. So some people are making excuses, some people aren't. And as always, I just don't want all the focus to be on Mo, because it isn't just a Mo problem. It's a Mo problem. It's a KONATE problem. It's a right back problem. It's a left back problem. It's now a new goalkeeper behind the back four problem. It's a knitting together the new centre forwards problem. So, the highlights, of course, will be on Salah, because he has been the standard bearer for many, many years and has been the model of consistency. But let's also remember the conversations we had when we got the guys we have. When WIRTZ came in, when Ekitike came in, when Isak came in, we spoke about the burden being taken off Mo. And we spoke about the responsibility for those goals and assists having to be shared across the front line. So that has to happen as well. Now, Ekitike, I think, is doing his fair share, especially for somebody who's come in new. But they are different. I know that the research that the club put in suggested that Isak and Ekitike are almost, identical to some extent in their movements and how they play. I think from what I've seen so far, there is a difference, especially in the way he's playing for us, because Ekitike tends to come deeper quite a bit more than I'd seen. And I've been thinking about a couple of things on the right hand side a little bit. So what I've noticed is, when we're trying to play patterns out from the back, so let's say we get the ball and it goes from Virgil to KONATE into, let's say, Gravenberch in midfield, and Salah's dropping inside our own half to receive the ball. So Gravenberch would have it, Salah drops back in towards our half, and he gets the ball from Gravenberch. What I don't think we're seeing enough of is that ball from Salah then gone back to Gravenberch, where a late run comes from midfield that comes into our right-hand side. So when Salah drops, that creates a hole. I want to see a late run from midfield into that hole, into that space, with a ball played in. So Salah drops, ball played in, quick ball in behind. We were undone with it. I can't remember what game it was, but we were undone with it this season, and it was a really good move. And it's one that I'm not seeing us utilise enough, of that late run from midfield, that third man run. I think we need to be clever to try to create spaces in that way. So what if Mo drops deep, then the fullback has a decision to make. Do I follow him, or do I stay in and guard the space? If he follows him, happy days, we've space in there. If he doesn't follow him, then Mo has a bit more time on the ball, potentially. So that's one thing that I've been watching back to try to figure out, could that be a way to find that bit more space? Because teams do it to us. When our right backs put out of position, bang, straight in behind us. You could see Palace were doing it immediately from kick-off. Right, where else are we at? Atletico Madrid. Yes, I think that was it, Sharkovic. I think that was it, mate. Yeah, there was a lovely run from them. We had them penned in on the right-hand side near the halfway line. I think there was 3 or 4 Liverpool players around, and they just lifted a pass in over that press, and then they were in space down the right. I think it was Atletico, mate. I think you're right. Airwolf said, Ekitike and Isak must start. Teams need to be scared. So there's 2 things that comes with being champions. You hope the fear factor is one of them, but you also have a big target in your back. You're everybody's FA Cup final at that point because, you want to beat the champions. The irony of Everton being the ones, by the way, to take Crystal Palace's 18-game unbeaten run away still makes me chuckle. Because they're still unbeaten, actually, in the Hill Dickinson Stadium, Everton, which is, an interesting start to the season for them. I think we will see Airwolf more of Ekitike and Isak starting together as we come back from this international break. Simple as I said, we need to play Isak and Ekitike in a 2-man striker system with WIRTZ behind them as the sole number 10. Then Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch as the pivot. Stop playing players out of position. I agree on the latter part, the stop playing players out of position part. I'm 100% with you on that one because it's not helping us. And it's only adding to the confusion of how come we don't trust our right backs. I presume that's one of the positions we're talking about here. Like, Szoboszlai can do a job there, yes, but you're losing something somewhere else when he goes in there. So let's figure out whether it's going to be Bradley or Frimpong, and let's give that guy a run. 5, 6, 7, 8 games. Let's see what they can do. So, yeah, I agree. I hate when especially when we've spent as much as we have, and now we're still playing players out of position. Although, interestingly, would we all agree that we got better when Gravenberch went to centre-back versus KONATE against Chelsea? Whether that's because KONATE had a knock or felt something, or because Gravenberch was just playing the position a bit differently, I certainly felt like we looked better in that period when Gravenberch was there instead of KONATE. Not that I'm trying to say I want Gravenberch playing centre-back, but another ball-playing centre-back. Dean said yes. VVD said in an interview the whole club needs to look at themselves. Yes, he does. He's the captain. They do. He needs to be in that dressing room being vocal. And we do. The whole team, the whole club needs to look at itself, and ask what's going wrong here. How is this happening? Grav reminds me of Matip when he went to centre-backs at Paul Driscoll. Yeah, so KONATE used to have a little bit of baby giraffe in him. He used to have a bit of that ability to carry the ball, and I liked it. It maybe wasn't Matip-esque, but what's really concerned me most about KONATE is his passing has been so off. And I think you can look at that and say maybe right across the team our passes have been off. We've seen a lot of passes that are in between 2 intended targets. So they're 10 yards ahead of a player and 10 yards behind another player. So you look at that and you think, all right, that's happening because the expected movements aren't happening. So what one player thinks the other guy is going to do because maybe the previous left back did it, they haven't done yet. So they're still trying to figure that out. Those ones you can almost excuse. But it's the one, it's the slack passes, half a yard behind the centre-back that makes him turn and slow it down. That I don't like. Sharkovic and Maka's form also worries me. He hasn't been great. Dom of War said playing centre-back's a lot easier than DM, so Gravenberch can fill in. Fine. He can fill in, of course, yeah. But, it would be, again, an indictment of a recruitment if we had to play him there. Because let's not forget, the summer was supposed to be about finishing the squad, building out the remaining areas that we needed to, improving where we can improve. And that's why so many people are so confused about how have we, in some ways, gone backwards with all of these improvements. Because let's look at them. We're not talking about flip a coin signings like Lazar Markovic in the past, where you never knew which way it was going to go. We're talking about ready-made, proven players that we've brought in. So maybe the expectation from all of us was a little bit naive as to how long it would take. And maybe the people who were worried about all those changes were right. Now, I wasn't one of those. So I would be in the wrong category on this one if that is the reason. Opponents always pressure on KONATE because they know his passing game is his weakness, said LFC 1892. I do feel that he's the one with a mistake in him more at the back than others. You know, KONATE can be amazing. He can be 9 out of 10. But if you were to say there's a mistake in somebody, I would also say it's probably him. You're the good luck charm versus United, bro. Yeah, I hope I am. Because if we lose, I'm not going for a while again. I'll call myself the jinx at that point. So, yeah, I'm hoping. And look, I'm just excited to see the game as well. You know, it's a bucket list game for me. So to be able to go to it, I'm really excited. Ian Harrison, how are we, Ian? So do you think we'll go into the market for a defender in January? I don't think we've any choice, mate. I think the club will probably be vague on it in its briefings, and that's understandable. But, you know, I dare say if I asked that question in the poll now, do we need to go into the market in January? I think most people would probably say yes. So for me, it's a yes. We do. And I tried to explain my situation as to why I'd say yes, even if it isn't gay. Because I think Gomez will be going next summer. So the centre-back that you bring in January, I think could be the Gomez replacement longer term. And then if you have Mark Gay sorted out for the summer, then he can still come in the summer, and maybe you've just kind of flipped it around a little bit. You've brought somebody in earlier than you would have maybe wanted, and then Gomez goes in the summer. That's what I would think would be a sensible conversation. Naturalist said, keep saying this, but why has Slot not done something like talking to Bradley how not to get a yellow card? It's worrying that he gets one almost every game early on and has to be subbed off. So Arna's definitely spoken a little bit about fullbacks picking up too many yellows. And this is why I keep coming back to why I want to see more of a Rio Engamoa or a Federico Chiesa or a direct forward. Because we're not drawing anywhere near enough fouls. As you've mentioned, if you get the fullback booked in the first half an hour, you give the manager a decision to make then. Do I trust that my fullback can guide themselves through the next 60 minutes? And then you also give the ref a decision to make every foul you draw from that person onwards. But you're not going to do that by moving the ball and not running at people. And I want more of that. Because I looked at, as an example, Pedro Neto at times picking up the ball for Chelsea on the right side. And his directness was causing us problems. His pace, his tenacity, and his directness were getting at us and causing us to give away fouls and other things. We don't do enough of that. Mo can't seem to take on a man anymore. And on the other side, it's not really Gakpo's bag to be taking on players and dribbling past them. He's more of a cutting inside type guy looking for a shot or a cross. But young Rio has that impetuousness or arrogance of youth, whatever you like to call it, that young wingers seem to have, that ability to just run at people. Run at them. And sometimes they run in dead alleys. Sometimes they end up losing possession. But, like I said, if you can get those fullbacks on early yellow cards or centre-backs on early yellow cards, it then means that they can't be as committed when you get the ball the next time, and they have to be far, far more cautious in how they approach dealing with you. Wesley said, I feel like we're stuck between two minds at the back. Fullbacks want to go forward, but can't without with how weak KONATE has been. Seems likely the fullbacks aren't comfortable committing fear or defend coverage. Committing for fear of defending coverage. Um, I've said that as well, Wesley, about feeling like we're playing with the handbrake on. Like, I assume he wants to play a Paris Saint-Germain type of football because he kept banging on about it. And the players we've brought in outside of our natural centre forward, because they kind of use Dembele as their centre forward. Other than that, you could make an argument that we could easily look to play that system, but we're not. We're somewhere in between the middle of it. And there was another point that I was thinking of a second ago, actually. Let me just read back through your comments. See, fullbacks going forward. Weak for KONATE has been. Yes, so the point I was going to try to make was I watched back Caicedo's goal, and I still feel that both of our centre backs have huge question marks as to what happened there. Because I thought initially Virgil had two Chelsea players behind him. But when I watched it back, and if I'm wrong, I apologise, but when I watched it back, my memory is that he had a Liverpool player there alongside him and a Chelsea player. So then you have KONATE, who's coming across from the right-hand side, moving left, but neither of them go out to close down Caicedo. And I was watching back Match of the Day last night and seeing Goal of the Month for September, and Caicedo did the very same thing in another game. Picked up the ball, can't remember who it was against, runs at the defenders and hits a worldie from 20, 25 yards. So you know he has it in his locker. You've seen him do it already this season, and yet we give him the ability to shoot unchallenged. That is unacceptable. And this isn't the first for our centre-backs. We talk about this so many times, where they stand off, and then it's too late. By the time that they've committed, it's too late. The shot's gone, or we're in trouble. And how we're able to be opened up by one direct ball, one pass through the middle. Which chance was it against Chelsea? Goalkeeper went long with one of them, and it was straight over everybody's head, straight over KONATE's head, straight over a right back's head. And it was so easy, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Like, one, how the fuck was that space there? And how are we allowing it to happen? Like, the whole point of us playing with a high line is that we have the recovery pace to get back into position. But it doesn't look like every one of those four defenders are holding a line. There's been some who are 10 yards further forward, others who are, dropping deeper. Doesn't seem to have the same cohesion. So you need to be working, and I'm sure they are, on that as a unit. But to do that, you need a settled unit. Leona, how are things, Craig? So sorry for the accusations being thrown at you. Do you think the lads can turn it around and start winning again? Of course. I think we've too much talent, Leona, for it not to turn around. It's just there might have to be some difficult conversations to be had in that dressing room, and some home truths about people who aren't pulling their weight. And of course, the manager doesn't escape critiquing in all of this as well. He needs to figure out what we're trying to do, how we can get to that point, and who the guys are that are going to deliver the performances and the style of play that he wants. And until we get some type of a settled team, I think we're probably still going to see these teething problems. So my best solution would be, if you've got players, like for instance, WIRTZ, I would say Champions League games are an easier way to ease him in, because it's a competition and a style of football he's used to, versus maybe the pace of the Premier League and the intensity of the Premier League. So I'd certainly be looking to utilise him and lean him more into those games. But the Isak one is actually the one that has me the most worried, which sounds insane. But that's the signing now, from what we've seen so far, that has me the most concerned. Because we don't seem to know how to play to his strengths, or even what his strengths might be. That's a conundrum. Because we haven't really played with a number 9 like Isak. Maybe Jota, to be fair. But Diogo was a bit more footballing. He had a bit more, what would I call it? Not footballing intelligence, but he had a knack for being in the right place, is probably, and a calmness about him in his finishing that Isak has, but we need to know how to get there and how to get the best out of him. Rambo Walter said 130 million flop. So before, well, I'll just ban you first because it's such a fucking ridiculous comment. But see, people like you are the problem though, mate, because you're saying he's £130 million flop. I won't even get into the price on the 5 million stuff, but the fact that you think anybody can be labelled a flop 8-9 games, in his case even less than that, into a new season is in itself part of the problem of modern football fandom, because everything isn't immediate. Everything isn't like a switch on a computer game. It takes time. It takes repetition. It takes relationship building. It takes understanding movement. It takes so many things that people like you that don't understand what they're looking at, and I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's the only thing I can assume based off such a stupid take. Because to label anybody a flop after 8 or 9 games in a new team when they're unfit, it's only comical. You know, when you're only saying it, clearly you mustn't be a Liverpool fan, or if you are, you're one of the ones that embarrass us on a weekly basis with these stupid takes. So yeah, that's just silliness. You couldn't call him a success, you couldn't call him a flop, you couldn't call him anything yet, because he's barely had time to settle in and he's not even fit. And that isn't even up for debate, that he's not fit. Itachi said, good to see you're fine. I hope you enjoy your vacation in Spain. It's well deserved. Time to relax, my friend. That's very important. Last few months were intense. Certainly it's been a mad few months in a good and a bad way. But yeah, I definitely need the time a few days away. Do me no harm whatsoever. And I'm glad that I've got videos recorded and ready to go out as well, you know, so I don't feel like at least I'm doing nothing while I'm away. Strikers tend to struggle if their team never creates any chances or gives them the ball. But that's what I'm saying. We need to find a way to make him link up. We need to find a way to understand where he wants the ball. Jesus. You hear my dog? That's my dog. Frenchies, man, they're lunatics. Ryan said, what frustrates me most after the last games is that we've lost the fear factor of our amazing business in the summer. All opposition were terrified. I think maybe we as fans, and I'm definitely including me in this, I don't know if we had unrealistic expectations. No, that's unfair. I'm going to say I don't know if I had unrealistic expectations, because I thought we were going to blitz it now. I thought, like you said, that fear factor was going to be there, and it was going to just lead to us swatting teams away. You know, 3, 4, 5-0 at times. Not every game, but I thought, okay, you will figure this out. There's too many good players there for it not to work. And also, on top of that, maybe this is my own naivety, but I also assumed there was a plan for all of this. So you would think the club have looked at the players they're bringing in, seen that they're a fit for the way Arne wants to play, and would have a plan of how to utilise them, which we heard every time we signed a player. They'd sat down with Arne, they'd been given the pitch about how they were going to be utilised in the squad, what their role was going to be, and that's not translating to that on the pitch at the minute. How much of that is down to tactics and how much of it is down to settling in? Unsure. But I'm going to be blunt for a minute. For me, the biggest thing we're lacking, if I could pinpoint one thing, is pace. We don't have anywhere near enough of it in the front line. Nowhere near enough. You know, go back and look at goals we scored against the likes of West Ham, Arsenal, in the clock time, when we had Mane and Salah, and they were like lightning bolts, breaking from one half to the other. We don't have that pace. Gakpo doesn't have it. Salah isn't the same pace, although he's certainly no slouch. And neither of our two centre forwards you would say are lightning quick either. So the only one that probably maybe has that lightning pace is young Rio, and young Rio hasn't got the opportunity yet. That to me is one of my big irks with the squad that we have. I assumed a lot of that pace was going to come from Frimpong and Kirkes, but yet we're not really seeing Frimpong getting a run of games, and yes, he has had an injury, but I just don't think we have enough pace in the team. That is, to me, a huge part of the problem. More pace. Because speed frightens the shit out of defenders. Colin said, exactly, why did we give up on that winning formula? I'm not sure. Every time I look at the team, though, it keeps coming into my mind. Like, I go back to some of the games we played against Man City over the years in the early days of Klopp, and there's a great camera angle of one of our counter-attacks from inside the tunnel at Anfield where you just see red players zooming past on a counter. And we were ruthless. And we were incredible. Like that, just more speed. We need more speed. That to me would be one of the very few things I think, even with the signings, we don't seem to have enough of in the front line. No, like Eli said, our build-up is so slow that there's no space to run into anymore. By the time we're in the final third, it's the horseshoe passing. Yeah. Or we're countering with numbers and making the wrong decision. Too many times when we were playing Chelsea in the latter part of that game, when we did, and it was end-to-end, both sides were attacking, too many times we were going out right-hand side, over again. Right-hand side, right-hand side, right-hand side. Everything was going out to Mo, even if we had more numbers on the left. And that was annoying me. I don't know why that was happening. Because, if you've got one player breaking to your right, two players breaking to your left, and one defender covering each side, surely you go to the left-hand side where you've got more numbers to create that overload and a better chance of a scoring opportunity. But more often than not, it was right, and then it just wasn't working out. Kilo said, what's troubling is that none of the guys are allowed to play to their strengths, not just Isak. Kirkes hasn't been able to drive forward like a Bournemouth. Frimpong doesn't look as dynamic as WIRTZ. So, let me go back to the start of that because I had a thought on one of your parts of that. Playing Isak. I think we can give a pass to Isak and the Isak problem because, again, with Ekitike, there was some of a pre-season. With Kirkes, with Frimpong, there was a pre-season. With WIRTZ, there was a pre-season. Isak is the one of the signings that I would certainly say I'm most worried about and least worried about in the same breath. I'm most worried about because it looks like we're clueless on how to get the ball to him. But I'm no doubts about his ability once he becomes match fit and sharp that he will take chances better than maybe we've seen so far, or will look a little bit sharper in some of the, and these are small moments I'm talking about because there isn't a big sample size to work with. So that one I give a pass to because he was late in the door and we haven't had a whole lot of time and consistency to ease him in. And I would say he's probably played more than Arna would have ideally wanted him to at this point because of the red card to Ekitike and because of our lack of form. Someone said to me a minute ago, do you I think we're too top heavy? Not really. Like, how could I say we're too top heavy when I would argue that two of the four forwards aren't utilised by the manager? So I think you can take Chiesa and Engamoa for whatever different reasons and say that both of them aren't getting the same treatment as the other forwards or the same chances. Now with Engamoa, it's obviously a youth thing and an age thing and an experience thing. With Chiesa, it seems to be a manager doesn't have a belief in him type of thing or doesn't want him there. I don't know, but again, we have a big enough sample size now to know that he's not being given the same level of opportunities as others. So it feels like once again we're in a position where the manager's looking at the bench and we're asking, does he trust everybody on that bench? And the answer is no. And we had it last season with Chiesa and Elliott. Looked to the bench, didn't want to bring them on. So we're hamstringing ourselves with our options if the manager's looking to his bench and still seeing people that he doesn't think can do it. Because then we don't have 6 forwards, we have 4. And that can cause, I guess, not arrogance, don't want to say arrogance, complacency. Because who's going to take your place? Who's going to take your position? And if you're Salah and you've seen Frimpong have one go with it, you're going to think to yourself, well, that didn't work, did it? So have I proven my point? Or do you give Chiesa a run there? I would give Chiesa a run there, but I don't think the manager is going to do that. Colin said, Semenyo's the profile we need. Wish we went for him. I'm in two minds on Antoine Semenyo. I can understand why you would say that, and I can understand why people would like the attributes that he has. But again, I would wonder, if you put him into our team, would we still be having the same problems, or would he still be having the same teething problems? And also, again, Bournemouth weren't going to be stripped of any more players. You know, they lost quite a few in the summer, so yeah, I couldn't have seen us going back in for him, especially after the new deal he signed. Lance said, Craig, firstly, thank you for making videos before you leave us. Second, I think we're seeing up front a lack of a united imagination, just individual moves. Definitely doesn't seem like it's a unit that understands each other yet. You know, we always weirdly talk about defences as a unit more than we do about attackers. We talk about goalkeepers and back fours quite a bit, and that understanding and that repetition being important. But I guess the same applies up top. And the irony in all of this is, despite what our stances were on Trent's abilities or on his time, I don't think anybody could deny we're missing him at the minute. Now, didn't really have a choice in it. You know, it was his decision, but it's pretty clear that him not being there has created an additional problem for the manager to solve. And thank you, Lance, as well. I really enjoyed making the videos, mate, that I recorded for you, because I think there's some really fun topics in there. Some of them, you may be a bit hit and miss, but 5 or 6 of them in particular, I'm really interested to see how people think about the arguments I'm trying to make. Itachi said, Isak plus Ekatike will be crucial. Striker understanding each other. They should all have the chance to play together. This will be fire. Look, there's no denying when the confidence starts flowing, yeah, it's gonna be a thing of beauty to look at. But, you know, when will that be? So look, I want to run through some news if I can. I want to start off with Josko Gvardiol. He was asked for the toughest players he's ever faced, and he said Leo Messi and Mohamed Salah. So, you know, big statement there. Simon Jones of the Mail said Liverpool, Chelsea and Manchester City all hold an interest in Crystal Palace midfielder Adam Wharton, and he's now valued in the £75 million bracket. So it seems like he's gone up 15 million quid in the last few weeks, because I swear there were articles a few weeks ago saying the Palace would look for about 60 million. Then there's David Ornstein saying, I think Liverpool would go back in for Mark A in the summer of 2026. Jarrell Kwanzaa, speaking about leaving Liverpool, said, I have been learning from some of the best players around me at the time at Liverpool. At this part of my career, I need hundreds of games to be where I want to be. I think overall that's why the decision was made. Also, David Ornstein said, I'm not expecting Liverpool to go for a centre-back in January as things stand. Of course, these things could change, but I don't think it's a plan. That would concern me. If there is no plan to go get a centre-back in January, that really, really concerns me. Because we're almost... Well, we are. We're rolling the dice that we don't have another big injury. And I don't think you can plan for that, because you've got an increased workload now on a reduced amount of centre-backs. So the likelihood of an injury is probably increased. So you would argue, in my opinion, go get that centre-back. Now, the only argument I can really make from the club side is, if they don't think there is one worth their while in January, maybe they don't want to just spend the money. And that's understandable, but you got to explore the market first before you make those decisions, for me. Because ideally, we need one. We do. We need one. You know, imagine we had an injury to Virgil. We're up shit creek at that point. Bayern Munich CEO, and Bayern have been so weird since the summer in their transfer business, but they've been talking about their failed transfers for Florian Wirtz and Nick Vultmada, and he said, "We can afford any transfer we want. We have an excellent capital ratio, but we want to be able to pay a player without having to run to the bank. That's not our DNA. The bottom team in the Premier League at €125 million has €60 million more in media revenue than us. Liverpool has €200 million more, while Barcelona and Madrid have €160 million. Should that not be a problem he has with the Bundesliga then? And not with English clubs have more money? Because, the Premier League has more eyes on it and has bigger TV deals and probably, you would say, a higher talent pool. Certainly bigger name managers. And look, he's probably right. Bayern are a very well run club financially. Sorry, I said very club well. Somebody trying to, I don't want somebody to hear me stumbling across words there and think I was trying to think of anything racist. So, let me just get that one out of the way early doors. They're a very well run club with the ability to spend money. But I also think there's a little bit of saltiness in them from the summer as well towards English clubs. They wouldn't have paid what they would have paid. They would have paid what it took for WIRTZ. If WIRTZ said, I'm going there, they would have paid what it took. But he didn't, and they didn't. So, right, on KONATE. L'Equipe have said Liverpool defender Ibrahim Konate is suffering from a quadricep injury, and the French national team will analyse the situation upon arrival at Clairefontaine. On top of that, here's another little extract from that piece in the Echo. Said, having spent close to 70 million on the arrival of two fullbacks in Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez, it's been a summer of change in those defensive positions for Arne Slot. The departure of Trent Alexander-Arnold to Real Madrid at the start of June and the increased competition for Andy Robertson and Conor Bradley means that Slot has a new look fullback team to choose from. So far, though, it's fair to say the Dutchman is working out what his best combination is. In the battle on the left side of the pitch, it's Kerkez who's nudged ahead of Robbo, with the young Hungarian starting all 7 fixtures so far. Kerkez, though, is enduring a tough time, hooked before half-time at Brownlee on a yellow card for a blatant dive. The former Bournemouth man is learning on the job about the huge increase in expectations and demands at a club the size of Liverpool. But we would have known all of this. Again, yeah, it kind of confuses me a bit, because these were the guys that we wanted, the guys that we thought and looked at that would fit the system. So we've got to figure out, particularly in Kerkez's case, who is used to the Premier League, why what he was doing at Bournemouth is different from what he's doing at Liverpool. And it can't just be that you're playing for a bigger club, because you could also make the argument he's got less defending to do, maybe, at a club like Liverpool, who are in possession of the ball more of the time. So there should be other areas that he's excelling in that maybe he couldn't at Bournemouth, whereas now we're just kind of seeing, like the article said, some yellow cards to our fullbacks that are causing the manager headaches before half-time even in a game. Galileo B said, which formation should Arne use this time forward? I think we get sometimes caught up in formations too much as fans. But some variation of 4-3-3. I don't expect us to go to a 4-4-2. I think some variation of 4-3-3, whether it's 4-2-1-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-2-2-2, some variation like that, whichever one he thinks the natural fit is. Somebody said something earlier on which was quite interesting, and that was that 4-3-1-2. That would be very interesting. You have Gravenberch, you've got your 2 8s, you've got your number 10 behind the two strikers. That would be interesting, but it would also be interesting to see who misses out. Because do you go with a DM and 2 8s? Because then you're losing out on the likes of a Salah, as an example. Yeah. That's my take on it. So that system that gentleman earlier on mentioned is one that's intrigued me since he mentioned it, because it would certainly feel like we could give WIRTZ the position that he likes most, and you could even put Mo as one of the two if needs be. So you could have Isak, Ekitike, or you could have Salah, Isak, Salah, Ekitike. You could mix it up. Craig, think about it this way. More people love you than hate you, except in Manchester. Honestly, I think you've got that wrong about Manchester. My lived experience of dealing with Manchester-based fans, particularly United ones, are that, they've been all right to me. They've been good to me, I would say. We all have club disagreements and banter, but I like that. I've always said I think Manchester United fans have been really good to me. Yeah. So I wouldn't put them in the category of ones that I think hate me the most. I would save that for Newcastle fans at the minute. Maybe some Evertonians, certainly Manchester City fans, and they've every right to, because I don't hold their club in very high regard. Aaron said, oversimplifying, certainly, but I'd like to see more players on less minutes and way more pace. The pace thing, absolutely. We don't have enough of that for me in attack, and it sounds, like you said, overly simplistic, but we don't. Also, interesting conversation point here from Anfield Watch put up a post, and Craig Houlden scored his first goal at club level in almost a year for the under-21s last Friday. He's just celebrated his 21st birthday. Does he still have a future at Liverpool? It is mad to think that Craig Houlden's still just 21, because it feels like he's been around since he came in from, I think, Derby County, if I remember correctly. And I'm always very impressed when I see Craig Houlden playing. And injuries have really ravaged his start to his career. So it is an interesting question, and it's one that I wanted to bring up tonight for the last few minutes to ask you guys. Do you think Craig Houlden does still have a future at Liverpool? But my point, you love more than you hate it. Oh, that, mate, I appreciate. Thank you. And look, like I said, a lot of support, even from people who don't necessarily like my football takes or me. It was very heartwarming to see that a lot of people, right and wrong still matter, and context still matter. And, even some people today are going, yeah, but you still use that racial slur on Twitter. And it's like, no, I didn't. I quoted the racial slur that somebody else used to a friend of mine, and I said we could have a contender for the wanker's wanker. So even at that, even though you've explained it, you've taken the time, and they're commenting on the video, the very video where I've explained it, they still don't understand or want to understand the context of these things. And context is really, really important in anything. I thought he was a lot older, said Billy Beckner. Same with me. I would have thought 23, 24 at this point. LFC Drew said no, doesn't think he has a future. Sharkovic said sadly no. No for Naturalist. Sean the Prawn said, what's the KONATE news? That he has a quadricep, I don't want to say injury, but problem, and he's being assessed by the French medical staff at Clairefontaine. So, I don't want to hear that he's out injured as well. So we've got to wait on that. Michael Jones said, nah, Gordon will be a money bag now rather than a Liverpool player. Donna Donna Godkin said, great young player, part of the 21's Euro winning team, but unfortunately I don't think he has a future. Matt the Cat said, let's also not forget that 2016 was almost 10 years ago. But even at that, if I'd said something 10 years ago that was actually me using a term in a derogatory way at somebody, I'd still put my hands up on it. And I'd still say I should be held accountable for it. Because 10 years ago, I was still 34. So, there would be no excuse for me. But the context shows you, and even the post underneath that says, to somebody else that day, I was taking the piss out of the original poster and supporting my mate. So it's like somebody saying, Craig, what happened? And I said, somebody called me an Irish bastard. And then I got in trouble for using that word. Just because somebody uses a word doesn't mean they're bad. The context of why the word was used is really important. And like I said, I was quoting the idiot who called him a half Italian, half English P word, which again doesn't even make sense. That's why it was so funny, that this person was so idiotic that's the best they could come up with. But also, like I said, I'm also kind of proud that they went back through 9-10 years of posts and that was the best they could come up with. An out of context post was the best, the most ammunition that they could find. Haley said, I found deleting X help get rid of the negativity being sent. I don't have it. I don't have X. I don't have Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I don't have any of those apps on my phone. I see stuff that gets sent to me and I see clips from X or Twitter that get sent to me, but I don't have them. So I don't post on the Anfield Agenda accounts. I sometimes ask for stuff to be posted and sometimes I will say, will you post this for me? But I don't have access to any of them. But I did back then, to be fair. I'm not trying to say that wasn't me, but I've gotten off social media in the last 3 years. What did I think of Federico on the right? If Mo gets good again, said Rafael. I think it's a good idea, mate, and one I'd be right behind. Why not? Chiesa at least looks like he's hungry, he's fresh, and he looks like a man with a point to prove. And why not give him a chance? But again, yesterday, like the whole thing started for me calling a white referee a numpty. And people thought I was trying to call somebody the N-word. Even that in itself, that's what all that nonsense started from. Me saying the word numpty. Now, they're probably right that I was stumbling over a word, but I would guess, and I can't say this with a good conscience because I don't know 100%, I guess I was probably going to say nonce, if I'm being really honest, but like I said, even at that, I couldn't say wholeheartedly 100%. But if I think about my thought processes making live content in these moments, your brain flicks through words real quick because you're live. So you got to make, and you're in the middle of an angry rant. So your brain's flicking through words. And this is sort of guesswork, but I think there's a chance my brain would have gone, don't call him a nonce, because then you're basically saying that about referees, and you had this stuff with coup, and it just was unfair to referees. So even in my rantiness, that was probably the way I was joining the dots. But the N-word part, it's just idiotic. Like I said, white referee. Why would you use that phrase in any way? Mo and Gakpo need to be benched for a while. Play Chiesa and Hugo, left-hand side to Jason Curry. Yeah, I think I agree with that, Jason. So we're still an unknown quantity with Ekatike on the left, and I'd still say we are lacking a bit of pace there, but it certainly I understand it because of what we've seen so far. you can't keep rewarding the same players with starts if they're not performing. Other streams back you, mate. Well, I'm very grateful for that, but like I've said, there's kind of nothing to back here. This isn't a was I right or wrong. That's what makes me most annoyed about it. The whole thing was a nothing thing that became something because some idiot came to some conclusion, and I'm somehow supposed to answer for something I didn't say. I must be I don't know, maybe I'm the first guy in the history of football YouTube that they tried to cancel for not saying something. Not that something was said that I regretted, by not saying something. That's a first for me, you know, because I've been held to account for stuff many times that I've said angrily, and if wrong, held my hands up. But yeah, never ever going to apologise for not doing anything wrong, which I didn't in this scenario. Have I ever thought about going live in TikTok at the same time? You can monetize from there as well if that's your intention. I believe you can't monetize in Ireland on TikTok. The last I knew about it, there's no creators fund, I don't think, in Ireland. If I'm wrong on that, apologies. Maybe it's changed, but not really. No, I don't want to take away from our YouTube audience, if that makes sense. And we've looked at simulcasting a few times. We actually done it in the past when Periscope was a thing and a few other bits and pieces. It's just difficult because you're then kind of trying to keep up with comments from different platforms at the same time as making your content and looking at different, you know, cameras and screens. So, you know, I'd rather just keep trying to be the best I can be on this platform. Have I ever used Reddit? Once, for about 5 minutes. I made the mistake of typing my name into Reddit once, and fair to say I didn't feel great about myself by the time I was finished with that little rabbit hole, and very quickly got out of Reddit and never wanted to go back near it again. So yeah, I have, but for like 5 minutes. Joseph said, WIRTZ looked good against Chelsea, getting better. He is getting better. I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people forget to mention that he's getting better and just keep saying he's not doing wonderful things. But I'm seeing progression. Right, ladies and gents, I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm going to go record. I do have a late night news video that I'm going to record. It'll be the last bit of content I make before I go away, where we're going to be discussing a few different things on a statement from UEFA around something they don't want happening. We're going to be giving you a bit of an interesting stat about Haaland and a few other bits and bobs. So, firstly, thank you all for joining me tonight. If I could ask you a little favour before you go, if you could hit that like button for me, really appreciate it. Don't forget as well, last show coming up in less than 2 weeks now. We will be at the Hot Water Comedy Club in Liverpool for our last ever live show. If you'd like to come and see us, whatever tickets are left, you can get with the QR code on the screen, priced at just £15. And it is an all ages event. And as I mentioned before, all the money we raise from ticket sales will be going to the GoFundMe for Joe Lewis's wheelchair basketball chair. So appreciate you. And again, thank you for letting me come back in tonight and have a normal stream before heading off. I feel a lot better now about heading off for a bit of time away. So yeah, appreciate you. Thank you for having my back. Thank you for being good people, and just thank you in general. I love you all. I appreciate you all, and I will see you all on most likely Thursday the 16th or 17th. 16th. I'll probably see you on Thursday the 16th. Talk to you then. Bye bye.